All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're really going to unpack a powerful sermon. It's all about spiritual pressure, divine purpose, and why one core belief is absolutely non-negotiable.
Okay, let's just dive right in. The whole sermon we're looking at today, it's built on this one single, really dramatic idea from Prophet David Uch, and it completely reframes pressure. It's not some random hardship. No, it's a critical test, a fork in the road that reveals what your faith is really made of.
So, you might be asking, how do you even prepare for that kind of pressure? Well, the sermon's first big answer is this: you gotta be all in. We're talking absolute 100% commitment. The argument is, anything less than that, it just won't cut it.
And right away, the sermon just flips our whole idea of comfort on its head. See, in this way of thinking, being at ease isn't a good thing. It's not a blessing. It's actually a spiritual danger zone. It's a huge warning sign. Yeah, and this right here, this gets to the very heart of the logic. The teaching basically says, look, if you're not actively pushing forward with some real intensity, you're not just taking a break. You're actually spiritually decaying. Comfort and being stuck are like two sides of the same coin.
So what does 100% even mean in this context? Well, it's basically a total mobilization of your entire being. We're not just talking about belief. We're talking every single ounce of your emotion, your mind, your soul, your passion, all of it, laser focused on one thing: no distractions. It's a call for being completely and utterly present. Okay, so if a life of ease is the danger, then what's the alternative, right? And that brings us to the second huge theme here: pressure. It's not just some trial you have to grit your teeth and get through. No, it's actually framed as God's #1 tool for creation and transformation.
And this becomes the central question of the whole teaching. It's a challenge, really. It's asking you to look at every single difficulty, every trial, and instead of asking, why is this happening to me, you ask, what is this pressure supposed to make in me? Big difference.
And to help answer that question, the sermon gives us this really powerful contrast from the Bible. You've got Peter on one side. His faith just completely crumbles under what seems like pretty low pressure, right? Just a servant girl asking a question. Then you've got Paul. The guy survives a shipwreck, gets bitten by a venomous snake, and what does he do? He just shakes it off into the fire. You see that? Same elements, fire, pressure, but two totally different results.
So here's the key takeaway. You know how intense pressure turns a lump of carbon into a priceless diamond? Well, the idea here is that spiritual pressure does the exact same thing. It forges a believer's real value, their real strength. In this view, there are just no shortcuts. Greatness is born in that crucible.
And look, this isn't some brand new idea. It's actually grounded in a really old theological concept called the refiner's fire. Think of it like God's workshop. The pressure, the heat, it burns away all the junk, all the impurities, and what's left is something pure, something strong. So pressure isn't random. It has a divine name and a divine job to do.
All right, now we're getting to the absolute theological core of the sermon. All this talk about pressure and commitment, it all funnels down to one single, central, non-negotiable idea that holds everything else up.
The sermon lays out this principle it calls the oneness of God. And the argument goes like this. If you look through history, God consistently works through a single focused channel. One man, Adam, brings sin into the world. One boat, Noah's Ark, saves humanity. So, it makes sense then that redemption would also come through one specific, singular source.
And this is exactly where that idea of oneness becomes so critical. The teaching draws this really sharp line in the sand between the old way and the new. All those repeated animal sacrifices in the Old Testament, they're framed as just a temporary reminder of sin. But the one blood of Jesus, that's presented as the permanent, once-and-for-all solution, the one that offers eternal redemption.
And here's the thing you can't miss. This doctrine is absolutely exclusive. The sermon doesn't pull any punches. It says this one blood isn't just one option among many. No, it's presented as the only path to avoid what it calls the second death, which is described as this ultimate spiritual consequence for anyone who doesn't accept this singular path. Okay, so if that's the foundation, the core belief, how do you actually use it? Well, the next part of the sermon is all about how this big theological idea gets transformed from just something you believe into a tangible, practical tool you can use in your life.
It's called the blood of sprinkling. And what's so important to grasp here is that this isn't just a metaphor or a symbol. In this teaching, it's presented as a real, active, spiritual weapon, something a believer can literally use to fight back against negative forces.
And get this spiritual weapon is even said to have a voice. The sermon makes this fascinating contrast with the blood of Abel in the Bible, which cried out for vengeance from the ground. But this blood, it says, speaks totally different things. It speaks positive outcomes into existence, things like mercy, peace, and healing. It's an active force for good.
And all of this brings us to the final really hard-hitting conclusion. It takes all these threads, that need for 100% commitment, the whole purpose of pressure, the power of this core doctrine, and it weaves them all together into one last call, a call for just unwavering spiritual toughness.
The logic here is super simple and direct. The sermon describes Jesus as a hard man, someone who endured the most extreme pressure imaginable on the cross. So, the thinking goes, if you're going to follow a leader like that, you can't be a spiritual weakling. The nature of the leader demands a certain nature from the follower.
And this image really captures the entire journey the sermon lays out. Believers might start out as just weak soil or sand. But then God applies that refiner's fire, that pressure we've been talking about. And it transforms that weakness into solid, unshakable rock. It creates a foundation that's finally strong enough for him to build on.
And that leaves us with the final and maybe the most challenging question the sermon poses. What does it actually mean to have a faith that isn't just something you believe in your head, but something that has been tested and pressurized and literally hardened into something that is absolutely resilient? A faith that, when the pressure finally comes, doesn't crack and deny, but instead it becomes.